Hello, what is going on, everybody? Welcome into another ZBrush stream. My name is Ian Robinson. I am a ZBrush trainer over at Maxon, and we teach ZBrush because it's fun and exciting and all that good stuff. So welcome in, welcome in. What's going on, Pac-Man, Wes, Frog, Roger? How you guys doing? Welcome in. All right, let's get started. Let's get some music happening. I like music happening. All right. Hopefully, it won't be too loud, but we'll do it. All right, so. Real quick, I'm going to do a slight intro of what's going on here. What's going on, Michael? Hello, Selman. The McBubbles! What's up? How you guys doing? Okay, so real quick, last week I was like, I'm not going to do a whole lot of work because I want to make sure I follow a bunch of stuff. But then I'm actually going to be presenting at Adobe Max, and I'll also be at Lightbox. So I wanted to finish a project that was recent to kind of showcase at those events that are happening. So if you're actually going to be at those events, that's really awesome. Be sure to kind of stop by and say hi. That would be great because I'll be with the Maxon team over there. So that's going to be really, really cool. So I wanted to finish, but we're going to go over what I did with this model, and then we're going to get into prepping for 3D print because last week there was a lot of interest in prepping for 3D print, and I really want to print this guy, and I don't know quite how I'm going to do it yet because it's really easy to just kind of leave this one be as like a solid object, but there's still a lot of work to go through. So I might make a just full version that will just need a little bit of support on no matter what printer you're printing on, and then from there just kind of go with it, or we might actually get really crazy and break it apart. Haven't quite decided yet, but we're going to go ahead and get into doing that. So let's cover what I did with the model first. And it wasn't actually too terribly much. I still want to detail it a little bit more. But what I did was actually with all of these straps, just like they were before, I just went ahead and found an alpha that I thought would work and generated a noise. So last week I was just taking these basic wraps that we had made, was detailing them, and then generated a noise. And so I can cover a little bit of what surface noise looks like, etc., etc. It's really easy, actually. Nothing too crazy. We don't even have UVs on this model, so it's just literally finding an alpha. I can cover that as well. And then some of the other stuff that I had done was detailed a little bit, brought in some textures, kind of created the skin to look a little funky. But we're going to go through, kind of finesse this a little bit more because there's still stuff I wanna do to push it just a little further. So let's go ahead and get into doing that. The other thing too is if you notice that sometimes it looks like there's a little bit of a gap right here, like collision is happening. Well, if I turn that noise off on that object, so let's actually turn that back on. Let's come to this one. Nope, wrong one. If I come to this one, notice how I select it. There's a little bit of, it doesn't clip anymore. That's just because it's generating noise that I could turn off. It's not set yet, so the base geometry is still very much not colliding. So if you do see that sometimes, don't worry. That's just a preview. Once we set that, it'll go away. So let's go ahead and get into pushing this a little bit more. Actually, I want to push the back here a little bit more. And of course, too, if you guys have any questions about ZBrush whatsoever, please sure to ask, and I'll try to answer them as best I can. But let's go ahead and get into it. So I'm actually going to grab the Move brush. So that's B, M for Move, and then V. And then I'm going to come up here to Brush. I'm going to go to Curve, and I'm going to turn on Accu Curve. And Accu Curve is going to allow me to pull to a point. So you can see how it's pulling to a point. If I actually turn that off, so if I go to Brush, turn Accu Curve off, and this is a simple move brush, notice it's not really going to a point as much. It's still very much rounded at the tip. But I want actually a little bit of that pointiness to it, so I'm going to go Accu Curve, turn that on, and I'm going to pull this up, and that's going to generate just a little bit more gritty and grime. I'm going to be very careful how I do this next part because I don't want this to collide too much, but I just want to accentuate some of these parts. And also, too, before I forget, the ZBrush Summit, it's alive and it's well. It's happening. If you guys want to participate in the ZBrush Summit by coming in and saying hi, seeing the new events, and also, too, we're going to be announcing more stuff later, so be sure to check out the ZBrush Summit to make sure that you don't miss anything. So, actually, that is going to be ZBrush ZBrush. I can't type today. Summit.com. So if you guys want to make sure, link is already dropped, but be sure to check out the ZBrush Summit because we have a lot of cool stuff coming. We're going to be announcing stuff, and by participate, I mean the live sculpt off. We're going to be announcing more stuff soon, so please keep coming on here. Check the socials because a lot of information is going to be happening very quickly, very soon. So keep an eye on that. That's November 13th through the 16th. And if you're new to ZBrush, the Summit is it's our yearly event where we basically show off all sorts of ways that the program is being used, have giveaways typically, we have all sorts of just ways that you get to meet artists and see how the industry is done. It's fun and it's interactive and it's really cool. So you wanna keep in mind for that. All right, let's go ahead and keep pushing this a little bit. So yeah, I'm just really going for kind of a gritty feel right now. Just like a bit of a torn flesh vibe. Go. This shouldn't be very clean. The other thing too is one of the things I really like to do around these wraps, and a little trick, is using the standard brush. We're gonna add a little bit of like that squish factor. So anytime you wrap something around like your hand or just a piece of anywhere on your body, if you like take your fingers and wrap around, you'll notice that the skin deforms around whatever is being wrapped. And this is a little detail that kind of helps push things to the next level. Well, right here, what I'm gonna do is with the standard brush, what's cool about the standard brush is that it actually takes the details that you have and it pushes the mesh from kind of like from underneath up. And so it helps keep those textures and those details that you've already sculpted in a little bit better. So kind of it keeps it intact. So I'm going to come through here and kind of inflate it a little bit around where the wrap is actually happening. And even cut it negatively just a little bit. So I'm going like a bit of a positive movement and then a negative by holding Alt. And that's actually going to make it look like it's being wrapped tightly around the wrist. So we're going to come through here. Same with this guy. Let's turn that noise. Oh, I don't have noise on that one. I don't have noise on that one. All right, cool. That's okay. Let's come here. I actually have, if I go to surface, go to noise, go to open. I've actually saved this right here. There we go. Perfect. Thank you, John. Yeah. Yeah, we're doing a lot of texturing right now. And we'll be prepping for 3D print here in a minute. You always want to go through and make sure that your model is as clean as possible and ready for print. You don't want to do a lot of extra work. Now for the 3D print process, we're going to want to make sure that we really make sure all the cloth and stuff is colliding properly when we start welding stuff together. Now what I could do is actually, I might do that. I might actually cut it at the wrist and use these wraps as a way to hide my seams. I might do that. That actually seems like the more logical way to go about that. Let's see. What's Hey Ian, I hope you had hope you're well. Had a question about UVs. Do you have to UV the mesh always for alphas in general use, or is it based on the mesh and what you're doing? So no, you don't need UVs for the alphas in which I'm doing. If we actually, it's a great question, by the way. So I'm going to go ahead. Let's go ahead and save this real quick. Push this to the next. And let's just open up a basics. Let's just open up a basic mesh. So let's come down here to the bottom. We're going to insert. So let's just do a sphere. And if it has UVs, we'll go ahead and delete them. So like anything, UVs are always, UVs will always help you generate textures in alpha, but in ZBrush you don't need them per se. UVs will just obviously give it a really nice clear direction, especially if you have good UVs that you've cut elsewhere, or if you're manual retopo and you made your seams. The UVs are always going to help, but for what I'm doing, the answer is no. What I basically did from here, in fact, let's go just as like a kind of show and tell. I'm going to go here to Google and type in some sort of like cloth texture. So something like, actually, let's just grab that one. That's fine. Just going to go ahead and just quickly grab, let's put this on the desktop just for now. Perfect. So what I did was I went to surface, I went to noise, and down here at the bottom, this might be a little hard to see. Let me use my, let's use my magnifying glass. Noise, and then right down here at the bottom left-hand side, there is alpha on and off. And when you click this, you can actually go and find that texture, and then go ahead and say open. And now what you'll notice is that it's actually, I can use the scale and the plugin and the strength to get that texture being pushed. But notice that the UV box is unchecked, that's not there. So if I go ahead and say OK, now we're generating that alpha. Now here is where it does get a little crazy, is that you see the stretching a bit. So based on the mesh itself, then you might get some deformation. But for the most part, if we go back to my hand for a second, so let's go ahead and minimize this, turn the rest on, and look here. Because the geometry I have at the moment, it's just broken up and it's nice and even quads all the way around. There's no real warping happening. I'm actually getting a really good projection of that alpha. So if you're not going to use UVs, just know that your mesh itself will give a little bit of stretching. And even still, you can kind of see that there is a bit of stretching right in here. Like it is being pushed based on the flow of that geometry. So it will follow it. It's not necessary to have UVs, but just watch out for that. If you want it super clean all the way around, I definitely then recommend doing UVs. And in ZBrush, how we could do that, I'm going to go ahead and actually delete this just for right now. And by the way, if you are using Surface, notice that I deleted it, Control-Z or Command-Z. That will go ahead and actually bring that back. So if you accidentally delete your noise after working so hard to get it, it is history labeled, so you can actually get that back. But let's say I don't want it and I delete it. I'm going to go ahead and drop down to my lowest subdivision level. And here I actually have some polygroups. And I'm going to go ahead and go to polygroups, auto groups, just to get, to make sure that I have completely separate polygroups, which is a nice way to get UVs. Then I'm going to go to Z plugin, Z plugin, UV master, turn off symmetry because my model is not symmetrical in any way, shape, or form. And then I'm going to go ahead and keep polygroups checked on with unwrap. And now my UVs are here. In fact, we could see them. The morph target was there. So now we can actually go morph target, and this will show me what kind of my UV map looks like. It's a little clunky. That's okay. It was just an auto unwrap. Now if I come back and go to surface, noise, go open, and I come here to my saved cloth pattern, I can actually enable UVs, and now it will wrap via UVs. And so now you can see how it's really going around perfectly well. So do you need them? No, but it might be the best approach. Yay! Yo, Andrew, what is happening? What's that, pinks? Yeah. So it's all in what you're really, really going for at the end of the day. If you're still gonna use the surface noise and then you're gonna sculpt on top of it after you've applied it, and you're getting really good results, and you don't feel like going through the route of UVs, that's okay too. It's completely up to you. I was actually like, nah, we don't really need UVs, because it gave me a texture that I really, really liked. So hopefully that answers your question. Is there some way to apply UV surface noise to HD geometry? So yes, there is. And the way you would want to do that is notice that it's just being projected at the moment. So it's not actually taking up any real geometry. But all you would need to do is when you finally go to divide under HD geometry, you would go ahead and divide it up, and then you would apply that surface noise, and then it should apply to the HD geometry. Is this a replay? No, this is live. It's live right now. Do I feel like a recording? I'm sorry if I feel like a recording. Let's see here. Boop. Let's go back here to Accu Curve, turn that off. Let's get some more texturing in. I'm also going to show you a really cool way to make a skin brush. Yes, but when you divide an HD geo, it loses UV check on surface noise. Just that slick with the demo. That's perfect. Thanks, man. Let's see, but when you divide in HD, it loses. Well, what you want to do is you want to divide first with HD geometry, and then you want to apply. You don't want to, because HD geometry, what it's doing is it's just saving your machine. It's allowing you to go up to a super high geometry level, and then you're going to want to go ahead and add the sculpture, but it's saving your machine, and then that stuff gets applied. When you want to export out, you got to just note you want to make sure that you go under render properties and enable HD geometry, which will activate it in the rendering, but also too it just helps enable it as all. At least that's how I understand it. So what I can do is I can play with it a little bit more and maybe get back to you with a more solid answer, but that's how I've used it, and it's worked okay for me. Thank you, thank you. Happy Wednesday, happy Wednesday. Yes. Okay, let's continue. So we're going to go ahead and add a little bit more detail to these nails because they're not quite how I want them. Let's add some texture. Let's actually go solo for a second. I'm just using /3 for this at the moment. Okay, okay. Added the wrong one. There we go. Happy Wednesday. It's going pretty good. It's going pretty good. Can't complain too much. You would like to create a displacement HD map applying surface noise on HD geometry, but when I turn on my mesh HD geometry, I can't apply noise on UV anymore. Okay, so you have not applied your noise. Yeah, let's walk through it together. So what you're saying is you're actually going through HD geometry. Let's try it here. Let's go ahead and save this real fast. Now, how are you creating a displacement map? Because the displacement map creation, if you're not using a morph target with your displacement map, that also can generate some issues with your map generation as well. Displacement maps, it's a huge ordeal to go through that. So, are you using morph target as well? That would be my first question to you. But in relation to HD geometry, let's give it a whirl. I haven't used it in a while, so let's see. So I have my surface. So what you're doing is but when you turn on your HD geometry, you can't apply noise anymore. Okay, so what I would recommend, so let's go here. First things first, we have our mesh here, and then we're going to go to our HD geometry. I'm going to go ahead and divide up. And then, where are we at right now? Let's just move here. So you're saying when you come here to surface noise, you can't apply that anymore. Divide? And then apply to mask. Then we apply to mesh. I mean, I don't have the geometry to support it myself here. Let's see. Let's come back here. Let's get rid of our HD geometry and start that over. So I'm going to go ahead, come here. Actually, let's do this real fast. Let's go to delete this one. Let's come to our surface noise. Okay, we make sure that's on there. Perfect. I'm going to go ahead and to get rid of HD geometry, you just duplicate your model, which is fine. Let's actually subdivide up a little bit because I'm actually pretty low. So let's say we got about here. I'm at subdivision level 7. I'm going to go to HD geometry. I'm going to divide that up. And then I'm going to go to my surface noise, and I'm going to go ahead and apply. Did I have, well, that might be the, let me see. I may not have had it on this one. Let me find out. UV map. No, let me back that up. That's a fair point. Let's come here. Get rid of that one. Come here, 1 second. Drop down to the lowest subdivision. Now, I don't have a morph target here. Just FYI. I don't have a morph target. I recommend using a morph target. If you're going for a displacement map, you should have a morph target. Unwrap. Boop. It's fine. Okay. So now I have a UV map. Inside my noise. I'm going to go to HD geometry. I'm going to divide it up. I'm going to go to surface. I'm going to go to apply. UV. It's applying. Whether I have UV selected or 3D not, it is applying. So I'm not sure quite how you have your setup, but it will apply each time. So with UVs, with it enabled, it is applying. So I'm not sure quite what your setup is. Okay, but you want to apply noise in HD sculpt. Okay, hit the HD sculpt HD. No, I mean, I'm not quite sure what else you're looking for exactly. Hitting HD sculpt will go ahead and apply everything. We're applied here. What version of ZBrush are you using? Are you up to date with the 2022.0.6? I'm not sure if there was a bug fix or not for that. Not too sure. But that might be something to check. But yeah, it seems 2022. I mean, it's applying for me. So I'm not 100% sure what your setup looks like. It could be a support issue at this point. But it seems to be applying for me as such. I mean, I'm not really in the right now going to be generating maps, but it seems to be working okay. So sorry I couldn't be more help for you. But that's, yeah. XXX. Just trying your workflow. Okay, yeah, go ahead and give it a shot. All right, sounds good. If it's not working for you this way, I would recommend reaching out to support because there might be something that is preventing it that we're just not seeing on this side. I'm sorry that's not working though. That's a bummer because yeah, that gets a little frustrating for sure. I'm gonna go ahead and Control Z and back up and get my sculpt textures here. So if you ever have HD geometry on your model and you want to just exit out of this at any point in time, all you need to do is just duplicate that subtool, and that will go ahead and X that out. And then you just delete your HD geometry one, and then you're out of geometry HD for anyone else who was following. And this is actually pretty... I'm going to change this back, go to surface, go turn on my noise. Actually, let's reload this. Let me reload this one. Oop, reload. Yeah, I actually had a similar issue once, but it was my fault because I had ZBrush. It ZBrush the mesh, and the noise is already plugged into the UV option selected, so it was kind of orange yet grayed out because there was no more UVs. Yet the surface noise did not change the 3D mode automatically, so it was kind of orange selected, kind of yet grayed out. Oh wow, okay. Wow, that's actually really interesting. That's an interesting scenario. I do, like I said, I do highly recommend that if for anyone who is trying to use or has the intent on doing some sort of displacement map, before you start making your sculptural changes on your mesh, create a morph target and then make all your sculptural changes. And then when you make a displacement map, you're going to want to switch back to the original mesh before you started sculpting. And that will also help your displacement maps align a little bit better. Okay. Resave that. All right. Let's go ahead and add in some more sculptural details. Come in here. I'm actually going to divide up a little bit. I want to change this focal shift. Looking kind of not so pretty. Let's go to stroke. Let's go to lazy mouse and kick that up. Get this kind of split, looking a little gnarly like that. Hey there. Hey, what's up, VLIP? How are you handling your overlap, cloth, skin, quick tips, or just brush over every part? How am I handling my overlap of the cloth and skin? So, great question. So a lot of what you see, so the overlapping right now, like how I did these are actually, the way I did this was actually really, really simple for these. This looks a little bit more complicated than it actually is for these wraps here. So I did a combination of techniques. For this one right here, let's come in here, let's go to surface, let's just turn that off. What I did for this guy, if I can wrap it the same way, there we go, yay. So I actually just used my slice curve. First off, let's actually go knife curve. Let's just cut this here, like this. We'll cut this like this, and let's just elongate this a little bit, just to make life more complicated for me. No, I'm just kidding. All right, let's go ahead and go to slice curve. And what I did for this one was I actually did something along these lines, like such. And then I'm actually going to go ahead and get rid of these indications here just so that it's open. And I'm going to go to geometry, delete hidden. And now what I went to geometry. You can use crease and crease your polygroups. That'll just make it a little bit easier on how clean you're going to want that. But I also did keep groups. So I go to ZBrush, keep groups, turn that down to 0, and keep creases. And then, again, remember that, well, some of you might remember from last stream, I actually do a percentage of my total active points, about 10 to 20% of the actual geometry if I'm going to ZBrush and try to get a lower mesh. So I got about 4,000. So I'm actually going to leave this at a target of 5,000 because that's around the same geometry, and I already know that that geometry is low enough and it supports it. But if we wanted to, we could do something more like 2 or 3. So it's completely up to you. I'm going to leave mine at 5, and I'm going to go ahead and say ZBrush at this point. And then maybe cut it in half a little bit. And then from here, for this specific wrap, I went with Z modeler. So B, Z, and then M. And then I hovered over my faces, did a Q mesh, and I went ahead and Q mesh some of this up. Sometimes went a little bit bigger. This one, tapping Alt, giving me a different result. And I did something like this. And now this was my base for my wrap that I used. So that was the first technique. Really, really simple. And then with a little bit of sculptural detail, it actually looks a lot more complicated than it really is. So if we come back here, come look at these, you could probably now even see on the ones that are connected. Let's turn that noise off for a second. Let's go surface. Let's turn the noise off. You can actually see it. So these are literally attached to each other. And it just looks a little bit more complicated. So that's for the first one. And that will give you that nice little wrap effect. For these, some of these are just overlapping cylinders that I just kind of mapped around the hand a little bit. Or I also used the topological tool. So BT and then, or the topology tool rather. And then I went ahead and started making my lines. I actually have geometry on here, so I'm going to freeze this for a second. With the topology tool, I actually started kind of making my own custom wraps. And because you can get really, really close and kind of continue that line forward, and you can start making your own wraps. So I did this. And then with Alt Swipe, that'll kind of clean that up a little bit. And then if I hit S and then 1 on the brush size and tap anywhere, that's going to go ahead and give me my topology that I can then separate. And so that's how I built the rest of those loops. And then I kind of just tucked them where I thought they should go. I also looked up reference on how hand wraps work and then kind of modified it to fit. So like his mouth is open and hands don't have mouths in reality. So I needed to figure out how that wrap would actually tear apart or separate with the mouth being open. So like this piece right here, this piece is just literally one piece. So if I look at this and go ahead. So I'm taking the simpler route on the things that are fully wrapped by just creating cylinders or custom topology. And then for these other ones here, they're literally just single little bits that I kind of tucked underneath and made it look like it's tucked and folding. And as long as the direction of the wrap makes sense, it's hard to tell that this isn't actually wrapped around. So it gives you that kind of nice illusion that it's there. To do an actual wrap would be really time consuming to do it that way. So for this, it was just easier to go this route. I do soon. The theme for the Sculpt Off will be announced very soon. I know everybody's super eager as much as we are. We're really, really excited to see what everybody's going to be able to do this year. And we always want to make sure we bring our best. So very soon it will be announced. Keep an eye out. ZBrushSummit.com. Trust me, it's you guys are going to be excited. Fingers crossed. Yay, what's up? What's up, Heavy Extruder? How can I make a brush like the one you used on the skin? It's creepy. I think it's the one Pablo created. It is actually the one Pablo created. Yes, I actually utilized some of Pablo's brushes in the texturing process because he built exactly what I wanted. But the skin texture itself, so the bigger textures like here, yeah, these are definitely Pablo's creation. But the tiny bits of skin texture, a little bit here, I actually built my own brush, which is really simple and straightforward to give you a little bit more of a feel. So actually I could show you how I made that brush. But yeah, I actually really liked what Pablo did. So shout out to him and his stuff because it was really neat to already utilize what he had built. So So guilty. Sometimes I borrow people's brushes. And there's nothing wrong with it. Take it full. But for the skin brush itself, what I did for the skin texture before this main texture, so like not this, but little lines and striations, was a combination of two things. One, clay tubes. What I love with clay tubes is I like to blow this up, and then I like to combine it with these smooth peaks. So what I'll do is I'll come through and I'll come back and forth like this, and then I'll do a smooth peaks, and that helps start bringing up some of these little bumps and nicks and stuff like that. And I do that over things that have like deformation. So I'll come through here like this, and I'll smooth that down. That's the first one. The second one is actually a form soft brush. So I take the form soft brush to make kind of more of the actual like pores in the skin, and I'll do a spray with an alpha 60 and make sure it's a negative cut. And then what this will do is this will actually, when you have this here and you make X's and then you smooth that down, that also makes those little nice pores and peaks and stuff like that. So through a lot of here, like I was gonna, for let's say I want to do like a little bit of a radial in this area, and then I'll smooth this down just a little bit. And that'll actually give me some of that nice little texture. So that's how we did those textures. And then the rest was Pablo's amazing brushes. He's a freaking genius. I can't even describe his stuff. Thanks for showing. I meant the existing overlap, like the places where the skin peek through the clothing. Actually, that is, like, if I were to select this right here, that's actually because I'm doing a preview at the moment. So I actually have a surface preview. So if you see here, like, if I come back to, that's actually, this little peak is actually just a, it is actually just an indication that the surface noise is kicking through. What will probably happen is I'll have to just push that in and tuck that in when that happens. But I'm just prepping here. If I were to apply this mesh and then come back to maybe the hand and stuff like that, now notice it's no longer peeking through. That's just a preview. Let's go back, Control Z. There we go. Thank you, thank you. Sculpt off. It will be happening. Announcements are coming. Promise, I promise. It's coming. Super exciting. Yeah, seriously, the ZBrush guy's brushes, such an amazing. Dude, seriously? He saved me so much time. I support Pablo any day of the week. He takes my paycheck. He comes out with a new thing, and I'm just like, I'm on it. I'm on it. Okay. All right, so let's start. I'm getting to the point where I'm going to start prepping this for 3D print. And how much time do we have? So we have an hour and a half. An hour and a half, so. Make sure. See, here's the thing too. I'm only detailing the areas that I actually need to detail the rest of the way. I'm trying to not detail the things that aren't shown. And that's important for sculpture work because we don't need to spend time on things that don't matter. As long as the base foundation is there, then we should be good. Okay, so first things first, let's actually fix up these wraps to have back up. Let's get these wraps to have the geometry that we actually need it to have. So what we're gonna do is I'm going to go ahead and open up my my version 3 of my subtool, my little subfolder, and I'm only gonna turn on the wraps because I don't need to see everything else at the moment. I'm just going to go ahead and turn all of these on just like such. So I could just take a look at these right now. And now I need to actually up-res these enough to support the geometry the way it is. So we can also just go solo mode. Now notice that right now I got about 66 mil happening in total. And the wraps are very, very low. So we're going to go ahead and up-res these to capture that detail correctly. So I would say based on this, let's go up to at least... Yeah, let's try that. Let's see, subdivision level 6. And then let's go ahead and go to... Actually, you know what? Let me try something before we do all that. No, this will be fun. I'm scattered brain today, don't mind me. We'll do each individual piece based on the way I have it broken up. And I'm going to go ahead and... We don't have UVs on. No, we don't have UVs on. That's okay. Let's just go ahead and apply that. Okay, perfect. We'll push these details a little bit more. But we're going to make sure that we have at least about between 2 to 3 mil for each version. So surface noise, let's go ahead and apply that. Push down. Divide, divide, divide. Perfect. And apply. Nope, no folder. That's fine. Apply to mesh. I'm just going through each one. This one actually has a lot more geometry than the rest. Let's see how this works. If we hit apply, yeah, that looks pretty good. That's fine. Frame it. Let's go through, apply each individual piece. Sub, and apply. There we go. Boop, boop. And apply. So I'm just looking at my active points and making sure that it looks to do exactly what I need it to do. Subdivide up and apply. Little trick with the actual waxy skin part, by the way. I have wax preview turned on. I love the way that looks. Okay. This is just a single strap. Perfect. That looks good. Okay. Go up, go up, go up. And apply. So as long as my... Perfect. All right. There we go. Now here's something that we're going to do to push this a little bit further. So I'm going to start calling these things... So we're going to save this. So right now I'm going to go ahead, open up a new folder, and we'll call this... Screaming Hand 3D Print Prep. Now, I don't think I'm going to finish the prep process this stream. It tends to take a little bit of time. An hour and a half is just not, I don't think it's going to be enough time to do it right. But that's okay, because we'll go through stuff. So we'll call this 01 Print Prep. But 3D print prepping is actually going to be very repetitive, but right now I'll show you the process and how we walk through it. So what we're going to do now, I'm going to turn solo back off. Now all of this is applied geometry, or the applied texture to the geometry itself. So what I will do from here is I'm going to go ahead and just merge this folder. And it's going to take all those subdivisions and it's going to collide it all into one spot. And now we have this right about here. Now what I will do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to delete this folder because we don't need all that extra geometry sitting in there. And I'm going to already call this 02 so I can go back to the first version just in case things go sideways. There we go. Now, if we want, let's try something real quick. I'm going to try to actually keep subdivisions on for a little bit so it actually doesn't chug the machine too hard. So let's try to reconstruct our subdivisions and see if we can get a little bit of build back. No, it's undoable, which is totally fine. So here, we're going to go to our... Geometry, ZBrush, keep groups. And I'm going to go ahead and this is 29 mil, so let's put this at about, I think 50,000 for the wraps should be low enough. Smooth groups off. Let's go ahead and ZBrush that. This might take a second. Make sure I caught up on questions, blah, 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 blah. In fact, you know what? While this is unwrapping, just as a big shout out to Pablo, I'm going to go ahead and send you a link to his guides. I am all about supporting other artists, especially if they make your life easier, and Pablo definitely does that. So definitely check out his stuff. Huge shout out to him and his brushes. All right. Let's see. Any other questions so far? Nope. Doing pretty good. All right. Wait, did I miss anything? Perfect. Okay, great. Okay, this unwrap's going to take forever. Let's go ahead and abort that. That's fine. I don't want to sit here and just have you guys watch me unwrap something. I can fix that. I can figure that part out later. No big deal. Or you know what we could do? No, let's not do that yet. Let's not do that yet. Actually, yeah, let's do that. Okay. Sorry. Welcome to how I think about how I'm going to prep for 3D print. I'm actually going to do myself a favor, and I'm going to isolate these wraps here down at the bottom. I'm going to split this up. And I think I'm going to do the same. Am I going to do the same? I might do the same for the fingers and key the fingers. That actually might work. Okay, yeah, let's do that. So let's actually isolate this wrap, and we'll we'll cut the fingers at a spot, and then we'll key the fingers so we can actually print this on multiple machines, including resin printers and stuff like that. That's what we're going to do. So we're going to cut the wrist off, we'll cut the fingers off, and then the rest will be good. And let's go ahead and do that. Perfect. So let's go ahead and now we're going to go to Subtool, Split, and Split Hidden. Yeah, there we go. Perfect. Now let's come here, and we already have some good groups to figure that part out. So if I were to turn on, if we were to go back to version 1 and kind of see where this stuff lies, we can actually do ourselves a favor here. Let's actually make indications of where we want these to be cut. So I'm going to go ahead with the slice curve. And again, I'm going to go ahead and see, do the details hold pretty much at 3? Yeah, the details hold pretty well at 3. Let's delete higher. Let's go ahead and delete lower. Let's turn on our transparency. And let's say right about here, we're going to use slice curve, and we're going to make some really nice cuts, or start our cut process. There we go. That looks pretty good. Like this guy right here, I'm just hiding it, and then we're going to go ahead and generate a cut right about here. There we go. Generate a cut right about there. As long as we can hide our seams with these wraps, this will be good. Actually, that one might be pretty good all by itself. I don't think I need to hide that. Perfect. All right. Let's look at the thumb aspect. Thumb is pretty much the same way. I might be able to get away with merging that together and then cutting that and then hiding that. And then the wrist itself is also, it's also a good spot. Cool. All right. So we already have some of this working pretty well. What we need to do now is come through here and start hiding the stuff that we want to split. Something like that. Let's go ahead and mask this section off here. Make that its own poly group. Perfect. Let's go ahead and turn this. Let's just make sure everything is in its own poly group. Just gonna mask it off, Control W, just to ensure that it is exactly the way I want it to be. In case there's any weird cuts that happen, that's a good way to fix it. And now let's go ahead and we're gonna split. Should we split hidden? Actually, you know what? Let's not split hidden. Let's come through here. You'll see in a second. Let's make this all one poly group. And it's hard to see the poly group, so I'm gonna turn the lines off for a second. Just so we can see the fill. Now these two colors, they are separate poly groups, but they are a different hue from each other, so we want to make sure that that's separate. Okay. Now I'm going to want to make this Dynamesh and actually split these off really nicely and pretty clean. So first things first is we'll come in through here. We're going to go to Geometry, to Dynamesh. I'm going to press and hold the picker, and I'm going to search around for the highest, densest part of the model. Right now about 1300, 1600. 2000 seems to be pretty high. Seems to be about around 2000. That'll be good. I'm going to go ahead and turn groups on. Now what groups will do with Dynamesh is that it's going to go ahead and take the polygroups into account, and it's going to close off anywhere that there might be a polygroup change and then close those holes off. So it's going to split it, close holes. I'm also going to come up here to the very, very top. I'm going to control stamp a history. So this way we can project history back to our Dynamesh, because even though we have blur turned off, if we get a little bit of detail loss, we can go ahead and just project that back. So doesn't always work. It doesn't only work with ZBrush or Dynamesh to ZBrush. You could do it the other way around too. So from here, I'm going to go ahead and take this. Yeah, let's call it an even 2100 or 2104, and then turn on Dynamesh. Boop. Let's let it do its thing. There we go. So now I got a finger that still has the detail. That detail still looks really, really good, but now you can see my cuts. And now I can use these cuts as indicators to start merging other things together as well. So let's say that works out. Let's go ahead and save it. I save a lot during the print prep process, believe you me. Now from here, we're going to go ahead and split off this hand by itself. So I'm going to go ahead and subtool split hidden. Then I'm going to, from here, we'll split the wrist and the fingers off as separate pieces for now. Split hidden. There we go. Okay, so our first thing right here, this wrap, we got to make sure that this wrap actually goes with the proper spot. So we need to okay, we'll leave that with the hand itself, and we'll use that to our advantage. Let's leave that with the hand itself. Split hidden. Actually, you know what? Okay, here's what we're gonna do. Okay, here's what we're gonna do. Let's isolate this guy. Let's mask this right here. Is that enough? Mask that right there. We can hide this. I think we can hide this. Let's make a nice clean edge. Let's make a clean edge. So let's do something like this. That should be good. Let's give that a different group. There we go. So that should be fine. Oh, you didn't get notified for the wait. Boop, boop, boop. Hey-yo, what's happening, Kimmy? What's going on with this channel? Did he get notified for the change? Oh, so, well, sorry. Glad you're here now. No. Glad you're here now. That's the important part. Okay. Now what we're going to do is I'm going to take this. Let's come through here. Let's split hidden. Split hidden. Just like that. Let's close holes. Geometry, close holes. Perfect. Let's make this one group. Yeah, Kimmy. So I stream now from 10 to noon this time. So we're on for another hour. So happy you're here though. Okay. We're actually prepping for 3D print. So it's happening. Okay. What this means now is I can actually take this, come through here, and now we can go ahead and split hidden. Split hidden, and then let's actually move this down. Yep, and let's merge this down here. Let's go to merge. Everything blurs together sometimes. All right, there you go. So now we're keeping this independent. We're keeping this connected. And this will be a really good connection point for this hand here. So these wraps are actually going to benefit us so much. Do. Oh, what's up? What's up, Gorshok? Gorshocked egg? I like it. How I make what I make is how it's made. Okay, we're going to start merging these things together here. So I'm actually going to go ahead, let's save this real quick. Let's start merging together the fingers and the wraps itself. Yeah. Yeah, Glitch, I'm hoping to have this project wrap up, and then next week I won't be streaming at this time because I'm going to be at Lightbox. So if you happen to be at Lightbox in the Pasadena, California area, please stop by, say hi, because that's where I'm going to be next week. And I'll be presenting there instead of streaming here next week. Okay. Now I'm just merging together the things that I want to be completely one piece. So I'm going to go ahead and merge down these bones too. Say, yep. Been waiting for this, yes. So now you can see here, this will be one piece that we print. So we'll key this, and the key cut will be here in the middle, and then these seams will help hide that all together. You live in Austin, Texas, or you would be there for sure. Oh man. Well, you can see Lightbox. I believe Lightbox has a free virtual, so you might see me that way if you want. Check it. Let's see, Lightbox Expo 2022. Yeah, I think they have a free virtual. Let's find out real quick. Yeah, expos. I think they do. there like a ticket purchase? Anyway, let me see here. Oh, that was last year. We don't want last year's. We want this year. Yeah, get tickets. Yeah, if we were to do this, let's just see real quick. Now that's in person. I'm not sure. I think there's a virtual. Check it out. Here's the link for it. You guys can check it out if you guys would like to. I think it's a virtual online. I think. Don't quote me on that. Thought I saw something there. I can't remember. You're South Spain? Be quite the flight. That would be quite the flight, Kimmy. Although I would love to have you there. You're a Blender user and this looks like witchcraft to you? Well, if you have any questions about what you're seeing on screen, let me know, because ZBrush is just it's the digital sculpting standard. This program specifically just deals with sculpture work in general. So if you're into sculpting and you're already using Blender for sculpting and you'd like to dive in a little bit more with some high fidelity sculpture work, let me know. Could you go a little bit into why you split everything up? Are there multiple pieces to print or something? Yes, VLIP, great question. So if you look at most statues, in fact, let's take a look at one of my other pieces. Let's see which one shows the print the best. Here we go. So if we look at it, so with the print process, the thing is that a lot of printers you're limited on size, right? So, and each thing that you have, I think it's this one actually, each model that you have is definitely, you want to break it up into manageable chunks so that you can actually, print it with efficiency and make sure that you're holding on to the sculptural details as much as possible. So when you're cutting up the print itself or the model itself for 3D print, what you're really looking for is sculptural details need to stay so it looks like the thing, and it also needs to feel like it's one piece when it's all together. So it's really important to isolate the parts of the body that make the most sense. So for example, might be a little hard to see based on its size, because the video, it's hard to zoom in, but let's see. Okay, perfect. So like right here on Grogu's feet and the lower portion of his jacket, you can see I merged all that together and added a key cut there so that when it comes together, the jacket overlaps it and it feels like it's one cohesive piece. So we're really trying to group the parts together that make the most sense to feel like it's one piece when it's all assembled. So in this case, I'm actually taking a look at the wrist and the wraps that I've built around it and basically saying, okay, this could be a really nice seam to put that key, even though once it's together, you won't really be able to tell without super close inspection. And even then, you don't want it to look like there's a seam there if you can help it. So this would be a good place to cut that. So I'm grouping the things together that help hide these seams. Same thing here with the fingers. I took all the fingers and I isolated them so that they would actually connect well with these wraps. The wraps actually make it extremely easy to identify where these seams could be, while the rest of it, if we were to go ahead and take a look at this and put on transparency, while the rest of it, I can actually hide the key into that section, and then from there, when I make my final cuts, cut against it, leaving a good place for everything to connect. So hopefully that makes sense. It is a little bit of a process, and it can definitely be it's time consuming as well, because you just want to make sure everything feels and looks correct. So like, for example, I'm taking a look at, let's go V5. I'm looking at these fingers, and so when you see these fingers and you see these wraps with the fingers, now there's still a lot to fix. Like, notice that there's a gap between the wraps and the fingers here. I'm still going to have to make sure that these completely intersect so that they weld together correctly. But for the most part, I'm just taking a look at all of the pieces that should fit together and then grouping them. So I want these two to actually be one piece. So I'm going to merge these together. But before I do that, to kind of solve this gap issue, let's actually take our move brush. So that's B, M, and then V. And I'm actually going to go ahead and come on down to auto masking, and I'm going to turn on backface mask. And now what I can do with the isolated wraps is I can actually come through and pull this in. Now this might give me some geometry stretching. So let's actually back this up for a second before we stretch that beyond repair. Okay, let's actually turn off backface mask right now. And I'll push this closer. I'll even move the finger itself a little bit. So that way I know it intersects well. There we go. Then I'll come in here, kind of kick that in. And then I need to take a look at the whole model itself and make sure I didn't push things too far out of proportion. So like right here, I'm actually going to need to tuck this in a little bit more, bring back that wrap seam that I really liked in the beginning. Go. So we'll kind of push this in a bit. Go. Something like that. There. That should work fairly well. So that's why we do that. Yep. Then hot glue them together? No, actually, super glue works well. Magnets work really well. It's all in about the approach you want to do. I tend to just use super glue. If you try to hot glue, depending on the material, could actually destroy the material a bit. So like, let's say I'm braving this and I print it out of PLA. PLA and hot glue, they don't work. Like, they work together, they'll glue together, but if the hot glue is too hot, you can melt the PLA. So I would say super glue, Gorilla Glue, or Crazy Glue are probably your best friends on that. Cement glue works well too, depending on the material that you're working with. Put that in a bit. Oh yeah, I'm definitely gonna be 3D printing this and painting. Very cool, very cool. Okay. So now looking at these one more time. So V3, is it V4? No, V3. V3, go back here, turn these both back on. And I'm just pushing in the fingers a little bit, making sure that it is going to go ahead and connect. Now notice I'm making all of these changes to my model before setting scale. I don't need to set any type of scale. 1 second, let me get some water. There we go. I don't need to set any type of scale right now to get this to work the way I want it to. I'm making all the changes in the sculpt phase just because I know these things need to intersect in a certain way. So I'm prepping all that beforehand because it's gonna be a little bit easier to just come in and work with a model that's already still kind of in a sculptural phase. So I'm not too worried about setting scale until the end of it, which we'll cover as well. If I don't, let's see, what time is it? It's 11. I can cover scale setting before we leave, but this won't be the final model. But we'll assume that we are done, and then I could showcase that if there's any interest. Now something like this right here, I'm actually going to go ahead and tuck this part in, because that geometry right there, that needs to kind of I can fix that on the actual palm side of things. There we go. I want to make sure there's enough space so that it feels a little bit natural and have the cut or the key marks in there. Put that in. And drink whiskey, that fixes your throat. Andrew, yes, this is my day job, absolutely. Yep, I am a ZBrush trainer here at Maxon. So I teach ZBrush every single day. I stream every Wednesday. And I also do a lot of other little things. Super awesome. I feel super awesome and honored to be at the company. It's really enjoying what I do. Okay. Taking a look at this. Come through here. Again, we're just making sure everything looks correct before we weld it all together. Are you going to Boolean cut those pieces at the end so that they fit perfectly together? Yes, absolutely. And I will be showcasing how I do that as well. We'll make sure to do the Boolean cut. It's a very repetitive process prepping for 3D print, but yes, I use Boolean a lot to do all that. Okay, here are my nails, my fingernails. Pretty gritty and grimy, which is nice. I might still kind of tweak once these get merged together, I might do some more detailing just around those fingers so they look a little bit better. They're okay. They could use a little bit more TLC. So I'm actually going to bookmark that little mental note. So let's actually save this real quick. And then we'll detail those later. Okay. Let's get the wraps with the palms connected in. So let's do this. Let's merge this down. Let's turn off the fingers and those wraps because those are going to be fine. And now let's merge together. Let's turn that part off and let's turn that part off. Okay. That's good. We could tuck that part in. All right, let's go ahead and merge this down. Say merge down with the rest of these wraps. And then we're going to go ahead and merge down. Nope, not delete. Merge. Boop. Those are my fingernails every Sunday morning. mine are not too pretty. Okay. That's funny. All right, so now let's go ahead and let's turn on. Okay, and then let's look at that thumb one more time. So that's that. And now let's look at this hand. Okay. All right, here's what we can do. So we can make a secondary cut, actually. So what we can do is take our slice curve and actually cut that right there. Let's go ahead and split hidden, boop, just like that. And then I'm going to go ahead and close holes. Come here and close holes. Come back up. Take this process here. Let's merge this down. And then we can actually finesse the rest of it. So let's merge this down here like this. And now with the straps put on, we can actually see where this is going, and then we can kind of weld that together a bit of the way. Come here, let's grab select rec. That, let's mask that off. Let's come through here and let's start pushing this in. that this will actually weld together fairly decently. Now, looking to do is kind of bring this all in and make this make sense. So that's nice and watertight there, but right here it's not. So let's pull this up. Let's push this in a little bit so we could cut against that. Yeah, we can cut against that. What you call this guy? Manos, the hand of fate. That's funny. What's the difference between ZPR and ZTL? I was taught to that always. I was always taught to save an open file with a subtool for file efficiency. So the difference between ZPR and a ZTL, a ZPR is a ZBrush project file, and what the project file will do is it will save a lot of your settings throughout the whole process, including up to your history. So for example, if I were to save this right now as a ZTL, it's only going to save this one ZBrush project. Each one of these are like, you know, essentially. No, I'm sorry. Let me rephrase that. Think of these ZTLs as canvases. This is one canvas. This is a second canvas. This one canvas, the ZTL, is only going to save the active subtool list that you are working on. So if I save the ZTL at this point, it's going to take this one canvas that I'm working on and save all my ZTLs. That's it. It won't save any settings. It won't save any major adjustments, and it won't save any histories. It's only going to save at the current state in which you save it. The ZBrush project, however, can save a lot of things, from lighting information to materials to history, and also all of these active tool canvases. So it would save not only what's your current visible subtool list, but also the stuff you were working on in the background. So if you actually have a ton of tools that are propagated and you worked on, let's say you worked on a character, right? And so your character was in one, and then you worked on armor in another, and then you worked on a spaceship in another one, and then you worked on his weaponry, and then you save the project. It's going to save all of that, every single thing that was involved. So it becomes much larger of a project file, and that can become very daunting to hard drive space, especially if you're working on, like, let's say a smaller one, like let's say 500 gigabytes as an example. So your projects can get massive. So you can get 20, 30 gigs of ZBrush project, which is, and that actually might be a little light. You could get pretty big project files. Where the ZTL, again, it's just going to take the current state in which your model's at, save it out, and then that's it. So when you load that back in, there's no history, there's no lighting information, your render settings, all those other projects you're working on, that's all gone, and it's just the one that you had saved. So that's the major difference. A lot of people are taught to, and I even teach it as well, to save as a ZTL in the start, because you're only probably working on one project anyway, and the file sizes are more manageable, especially if you got to transfer back and forth. The only time I save a project is if I absolutely have to, meaning, like, you know, my boss is like, I need to see everything you've done, so save the whole project. Or B, when I would freelance, the client would request, hey, save the project for me. I want to be able to go back at a certain state. So that's all. You're just going to be dealing with much larger file sizes. But that's the major difference. Is there a way to make everything double-sided by default? I hate importing 30 subtools from other software and have to one by one set it all up. Let me double check before I answer that question. Boop, 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 boop. You. Don't. Maybe. I want to say maybe. I don't usually save double-sided on by default, but if you're working on an import, yeah, that's a good question. I don't know, to be honest with you. I can find out. Trying to think. Now let's clean utility. I would say you could try Z startup utility. Has backface man dynamic. I'm not seeing double-sided turned on. I don't think so. But I'll double check. I don't think so. ZTLs are not 3D print ready. No, you're thinking of STL. STL is the standard file size for, or the standard file format type for 3D printing. Most 3D printers worldwide would accept an STL. Is it a good practice to separate your models via grouping? Yes, absolutely. It makes for easy selection. It also helps with edge flow when you do ZBrush. It also allows you to kind of isolate and work on a specific spot without having the rest of the model there. I teach to companies. I teach to clients. So my job is basically when somebody needs to learn ZBrush, they can come to Maxon, and Maxon then sends them to me, and then from there I teach. So a lot of companies from multiple industries, from aerospace to film to games to statue work. Anybody who needs or wants to learn 3D printing, they show up to our company, and then we set it up to provide some sort of training. I also do the Ask ZBrush videos. I also help around here, so if we have clients that come to us, we help out. Yeah, no worries, Kimmy. Yeah. Yeah. It does sound, it can get heavy pretty quick. Yeah, ZTLs are a great way to go. Again, ZBrush project files, I do them with purpose if I feel like I need to. Saving history on some projects is really good. What I can say is a good way to utilize ZBrush projects is actually when I'm ready to send this to 3D print, what I will do is I will create a new, I'll reload the ZTL, then I'll create a project. Then I will use tools like contrast, contrast delta, contrast target, any type of sculptural details to make it pop a little bit more. And then I'll save that project. It's going to be a very small project, but if I send it to print and then the print itself is not, the print itself is like the details aren't quite the way I want it, I can open that project back up, and then from there I can turn around and I can then push the details further using the history that's already there by like using a just last or something. So there are a few ways to go about doing that. Okay. Now here's the thing I'm going to need to decide real quick, which is how I want the... I think I'm going to leave this as one piece, the gums, but the tongue will be a separate piece. So, for example, I'm going to come down here. And I'm going to merge this part down. And I'm going to merge this part down, but we're going to get rid of this guy. So this will just be the... do this all the time. Tongue. I always spell the word tongue wrong. Always. Random facts. There we go. And now I'm going to go ahead and merge this part down. There we go. Let's see here. Oh, okay, cool. More questions. I always save ZPRs to make time lapse at the end. Absolutely. I love it. I imported a blockout from Blender to ZBrush, and even though Dynamesh is set quite high, the resolution barely changes. The scale seems to be alright, 2.5 units. Any idea what the issue could be? Interesting. So, okay, you imported a blockout from Blender, and then you brought it in to ZBrush. You turned on Dynamesh. Okay. I might need some clarification on this one. I don't have Blender currently installed. I'm going to go 3, but we're going to go merged subtools. print prep, just to give me some identification. The blockout might be too big. Okay, so here's the so I have a few thoughts on that. Okay, so we already saved it. So let me ask a question back so I can hopefully clarify where you're coming from. And we're going to use a sphere for this. Okay. I'm going to go make Polymesh 3D. All right. And let's go ahead and turn our lines on for a second. So you brought in a block out. Let's just say for argument's sake, this is our block out. And we'll even give it some different polygroups just for fun. Why is this one white? I feel like that's such a weird color sometimes. Okay, so you bring in a model. Do I have a STL I can bring in? Let me see something real fast. Let me actually import. Let me see. I gotta go hunting for a second, but this actually might be a more fair assessment. Let me go hunt for a second. Because what I'm thinking is it could be too big, your project itself, or you've turned on Dynamesh and then the resolution was set too high, and then you tried to change the resolution and then you did like a control swipe but nothing changed. And if that's the case, then what you're doing is basically, if you don't make any sculptural changes when you turn on Dynamesh and then you do a swipe, nothing's going to change because there was no changes for Dynamesh to rebuild anything. So sometimes it's really good to just do like literally a super light, like 1% smooth on the model and then try it again, or Control Z Dynamesh at a forcibly lower resolution. I'm trying to find like a ZTL that I've done. Let me actually stylize tanks. Where is the STL? Okay, perfect. I found it. Let me see if I can. This will be hopefully a fairer comparison. So let's say that this is my block out from Blender. Now, I am curious if you're using the GoB workflow, where you're hitting a button and then it's importing straight into ZBrush. I'm familiar with that workflow, but I don't use it a lot. But here, if I were to go to geometry, this is what I tell a lot of people to do. When you bring in a model and it's a block out of sort, use the picker to identify where that, and find the densest resolution you can. Something that that looks to be the highest number. So as I'm scanning around, I'm just left clicking and pressing. I'm noticing that at some parts I'm getting like maybe 1,000. So what I would do is use the picker to identify something that is pretty close to what the resolution would be at its densest moment, and then turning on Dynamesh. Give it a second, and then here. But if I were to control swipe, there's no sculptural changes. And notice I dropped the resolution. I dropped the resolution. There's no sculptural changes. So if I just do a light smooth somewhere and then do a sculptural change, notice then it's going to change down to that 32 resolution. So again, if I don't do anything to this model whatsoever, just a straight import, and then I do my resolution, and then I'm just swiping, even if I change that resolution slider, nothing is happening to the model because no sculptural changes were happening. So is this what you're experiencing? Because if that's the case, then I would say, you know, drop down the resolution a little bit, do like a light smooth somewhere where you barely notice it, even drop your smooth down to like 1, and then smooth that one spot, then swipe it. Now it's going to recognize the sculptural change, and then it will rebuild the topology. Oh, can you hear the mouse clicking? Sorry. Yeah, exactly. You imported it, Dynamesh using polygroups, and started sculpting, imported using OBJ. Okay, that's fair. No, it actually does change, but it takes huge steps to see a difference. Interesting. We tried remeshing Dynamesh again. Sometimes it fixes geometry. Thanks. Actually, this tank was a part of a newsletter drop for download. So if you're a part of the download, you can actually print this tank for yourself. Thank you, thank you. This is actually also during a how it's made. If you'd like to see how this is made, get my little segues in there. Pixel logic, how it's made. Actually did how it's made tank. Boop. I'll actually drop that in there. I built it all the way through a stream. I built it and then I showed you and then there. Yeah, okay, perfect. But yeah, that's what I would say. So the ZBrush route, ZBrush route could also work as well, but it should work like this. Yeah, let me know. Keep me posted on that. What's happening here? What is this one? Was this one of the other ones? Oh yeah, this is, we don't need that anymore. Just delete that. Okay, how much time do we got? We have a few more minutes, so we still got time. We got 30 minutes. Awesome. Nice, nice, nice. Yes. Hello, Jack. Hello, welcome in. Okay, let's mask that off. Let's come in here. Let's push this back into the model itself. Again, we're going to want that collision happening. Go. Now for this right here, let's actually push this into, let's push that in. Come through here and let's push that in as well. And push that down and in there. We'll make this collide. Let's turn on the... Okay, good. Just making sure I'm not pushing things too far. I'll push that in there. That'll work. There we go. You know, your finger, funny as if the mouth was actually biting a spare finger. That would actually be really funny. I like that idea. If nobody recognizes this hand, actually, this was I saw this hand not sculpted. It was a sticker on the back of a car, and I later learned it was the Santa Cruz screaming hand, and that got me super excited. I didn't even know that up until this. So what's going to be fun is cutting that finger in its place, but that is okay. We'll do it. We may have to push this geometry up a little bit for the finger itself to cut, but I don't mind the way this is going. This looks pretty good. This is where I get to come in and actually like push some of this around a little bit. That look a little bit more the way it is. Let's go back to V1. Yes. Yes! That's looking pretty good. Pretty happy with this. That will cut fine. Let's push this down. This will also cut well. It's okay that these wraps look a little messy at some spots because it's just gonna add a little bit more fun little details. It's gonna feel like it's not clean. It's gonna feel gross, and that's always good. Okay. All right. While we still have time, let me create a key, and then let's do a key cut, because what I would like to do is showcase exactly how that's going to work, and we might just do that on the wrist because that'll be the easiest one to cut, but it's going to be the same difference. The only real issue that well, not issue, I don't even like that word. The real thing that's going to happen is, so the process I'm going to take with the wrist is the same process I'm going to take with the fingers and the tongue. However, the only difference will be how I push the geometry to make sure that it cuts correctly. These are little things and stuff like that that I want to make sure cut through, and I can showcase that model when I come back from, Lightbox is Friday, so Adobe Max is next week, which where I'll be at. So after Adobe Max, I can showcase the breakdown of that because I want to finish it and get this out as soon as possible. But it's going to be the same process. So what you're going to watch me do right now will be the same thing all the way through. So let's go ahead and merge this down on the fingies. All right. So I'm going to isolate just this. So now let's save. Come over here, bring this back. Let's go to save. So let's create our first key. So the first key we're going to do, let's actually come here. Yeah, let's use the little tank. The tank will be hidden because we're going to go initialize Q cube. So this is how I make my keys. Q cube this guy. And I have just a literal 8-sided cube. I'm going to go ahead and send this home. I'm going to stretch this up. Something like this. I'm going to mask off the top part and invert that. Snap this to the center. I'm going to go ahead and scale this down. Now we want our key to have some sort of, what's the word I'm looking for? We want it to have some sort of density to it. So what I'd like to do from here is go to geometry, turn smooth off, and divide this up a few times, and then delete lower, and maybe divide up a couple more times, delete lower. There we go. That's a little bit better. Something like that. That'll give me a nice key to work with. And then I'm going to go ahead and actually create a secondary key. So Control Shift and D, or Command Shift D. And what I'm going to do for this one is actually make this one wider and a little bit stubbier. So this will give me a second key to work with. Doesn't really matter where it's placed. So we'll do something like that. So we'll have a wider key for one segment, and then we'll have a skinnier key for another, which will work. So now we're just going to go ahead and rename this. We'll call this wide key. And we'll come on up, rename this one, call this, we'll call this tall, dark, handsome key. Perfect. I'm going to go ahead and save these out, and I'll call these the Screaming Hands keys, ZTLs, that way I can always refer back to them. And if we even want to, what we could do is point this up at the sky, go ahead, go hit brush and say create insert multi-mesh. And now I can draw these out independent, and I can select which key that I want, which that's always a good way to go about it. Simple brush that you can always refer back to, so you can save as and call this my 3D print key brush. Really simple. Now we come back here to this hand. Come on in. We got our key. And now I'm going to go ahead and use the wide key for this. Scale this up. And then we can kind of position this exactly where we want this to be. Actually, you know what? Let's go back in time. And let's just have it... Yeah, there we go. Just push that in, make sure it intersects, and we have that right there. Hey, ciao from Italy. Nice project. Thank you, thank you. Welcome in, by the way. Welcome in. I only speak English, but I use Google Translate because I like to at least see what everybody is saying as much as I can. So let me see real quick. Okay, great, wonderful. Boop, boop, boop. Man, I shouldn't watch these streams. Makes me want to sculpt so bad, and I gotta work still. No, you gotta work still. It's okay. You should come in here and then like see what we're doing, and then write down what you're going to sculpt later, and then you tag me in it. You're currently making a Genshin statue, will be 3D printed, and cast in silver. My first own project in a long time. I'm excited. Usually I just do what the company tells me. That's super awesome. Which I will not name, no self-promotion. You're totally fine. You know, when they cast the prototype model in silver, they still need to carve in all the details by hand. Yeah, I bet. Is the 3D print going to pick up or be able to pick up all the cloth details in the wrap? I wasn't sure what the level of detail 3D printers are able to produce these days. Absolutely. To answer your question, yes. However, there is an emphasis here, is that it's going to depend on what printer I'm utilizing. So if I'm using a resin printer, even a very affordable like Accu Mars printer will very easily be able to capture a lot of these detail, depending on the size and the way I push the model. However, that being said, there are a lot of printers that just won't be able to capture the level of detail that are in the cloth, depending on size. So for example, an FDM printer would have a much harder time capturing that, just because this level of detail here is definitely very fine, and it would just take way too long. But resin printing, absolutely, that would cover a good chunk of it. Now, I'm not saying that FDM can't. Mind you, I am saying that FDM would just have a hard time, but I've seen some incredible prints coming from an FDM, including some models that I've printed. I have a whole Ecrochet model printed from FDM, but it took forever. It really did take forever. So it just depends on what you're trying to achieve. Okay, so there's that. Next, let's take these fingers here. And, ooh, look, the thumb needs a little bit of TLC here on the inside. So I'm going to take this guy right there. Actually, let's go through here. Let's do auto groups. Let's grab this. And we need to just kind of push that back in. Get in there. Get in there. Same thing, we're going to take our newfound 3D print key, and we're just going to go ahead and place some keys where we think they need to go. Actually, I'm going to not do this on the finger side. I'm going to do this on the hand side. I think this will make a little bit more sense. I'm going to push that in. I love to just lay out my keys, just kind of see where it all's at, and then we finesse afterwards. So we're not worried about exactly the true position, we're just wanting it to be in its spot. Perfect. Now for the tongue, so let's go ahead and clear all that. Let's take a look. Do we see our keys sticking out anywhere? Nope, that actually looks pretty good. Okay, cool. So we can adjust that one to be a little bit bigger. And we can adjust this one to be a little bit bigger. How much time do we got? Okay, 11:40. Perfect. Go ahead and save this. Micro details are a bummer. Yeah, they can be for sure. I am a beginner. That is cool. Awesome. Thank you. No worries. Beginners are always welcome. Trust me. Why can't you glue them together without the keys? So you can. However, if you want the alignment to be true to your model, keys are the solution. It's also, especially if you do plan on doing any type of, let's say, cast and mold pours, keys are also another great way to basically add the pour spouts in the mold. So then when you pour it all down, it's naturally going to a key, and then you can just have it kind of there, clip it off, sand it down, and you're good to go. Your last question. Come on. You don't have to shout out. Don't do that. Now, last question I will shout out. Which 3D print materials would you use to bring out the colors? Actually, I would print all of this in a probably just a basic gray material. That would make all the details pop really, really well. And then I would paint this by hand. And painting this, what I would probably do, it's actually pretty popular in the painting community, is that actually paint a gradient of black from the bottom, and then I would, with primer, like black primer, and then I would also hit the top part coming down with white primer, so getting this kind of gradient, black and white, so like highlights and dark shadows. And then when you paint on top of it, it helps emphasize some of the actual coloring, and so you can give it a nice highlight and make the shadows feel a little bit more darker. So that's one way I would go about doing that. But if I wanted to print this all in individual colors, I wouldn't be prepping it this way because there's just too much. This wouldn't work this way. I'd have to like separate everything, and I don't want to do that. And since it's not going for actual production, if this is actual production, like let's say like a high-end model, like collectible company, there might have been a conversation about whether or not these wraps were actually wraps, or if they were truly going to just be sculpted. I guess that conversation probably would have taken place prior, but nonetheless, interesting. Actually, I need to mask this off. Just depends on the company. But here, yeah, I would just print it all in gray, call it a day. There's no other way. What else do you want me to say? This is a really bad rhyme. I don't do this all the time. Okay, fixing some of these details here. All right, so key cut time. Key cut time before we run out of time. So I'm gonna go ahead and just do a demonstration of how I'm gonna cut this, but there's still so much finessing I want to do with this. So I will do the rest of this off stream, but at this point we're gonna bookmark this section of this video because I want to be able to have you come back and see how I did it. And I'm gonna do the same thing for all the other components. So what I would do is I would actually I'm gonna duplicate, I'm going to copy this. I'm going to put this over here and paste it in this document so we're not working with such. I'm going to go ahead and copy this, and I'm going to paste this in here. Go paste. Boop. Okay. So let's make our key cut. So we have this here, and then we have this one here. Now I'm going to want to make sure that I close any and all holes. Let's go ahead and close some holes. There we go. That should be beautiful. We can even turn this off. If we don't want the color, we could just turn this off. It's up to us. Turning everything back on, making sure that it wraps correctly. So let's turn transparency on. Okay. I'm actually going to go ahead and try something real fast. Let's go clip curve. Actually, before I do that, I back that off over there. I moved it out of the way on purpose. Okay, I'm actually going to go ahead and drop clip curve down. No, not clip curve. I'm going to drop the intensity down to like 40. I just want to kind of push that little bit of a tail back in, but I don't want a super big one. So I just want to like kind of nudge it back comfortably. That. So what I would do from here is I would put this in. So this key is not going to change. I would duplicate this and call this my final. This would be my final key, or my final wrist. So final wrist. I'm going to hide this. And then I'm going to come here, turn this on, and I'm going to go ahead and create this to call this the hand. And then from here, I'll take this and I'll call this the wrist cutter. Oh, look at that website. They just come back every time. Block, hide, get out of here. Shapeways has multiple sandstone material which supports. Yeah, I'm familiar with that. There are some printers that can completely print this in color. I am familiar with this, but I personally haven't used their service, so I don't know what the quality is. But I have heard of it. Yes, let's push that in there. We don't need that. Okay. So now with this cutter, this is what I'm going to do. So first things first, it's easier to cut something that's Dynamesh than a bunch of all these other booleans. So what I'm going to do, turn all that off. I'm actually going to go ahead and Dynamesh this. So this will be the boring part of the stream. But I'm going to book or history stamp this part here. You make sure that everything is connected as well as it can be. And now here we have a lot. This is a big file here. So we're going to go ahead and just save as test cut. Okay. And now I'm going to come through Dynamesh and we're going to find that resolution. Notice that's a big theme. We're going to go something low. Let's try 1800. Turn blur off. Turn polish off and Dynamesh. Now Dynamesh is going to go through and it's going to watertight everything as best as it can. Actually, that did a really good job. I'm really happy with that. Yeah, that did really, really well. Perfect. Very happy with that. Yeah. All right, great. Beautiful. Now we're going to come through with this, and we're going to do the same thing. I'm going to go ahead and Dynamesh this guy so that it's all one piece. So geometry, same thing. Picker. I think you guys are getting what I'm putting down. 1800 as well seems to be around the average. Dynamesh that. And again, no real detail loss. Very little detail loss. I'm really happy about that. Same with this one. Control Z. Very little detail loss. So that's why I love that picker so much. It really does just make it the difference. So now what I'm going to do now with this is completely Dynameshed, and I have these two models here. When I'm going to come through, this is where I do this this is where I do the scene scale typically. I'll scene scale it and then I'll make my cuts. And the reason why is because I want to be able to measure the distance between the cut wall and the actual connecting key. So the male and the female, I want to be able to actually accurately measure that space. So before I do anything else, I'm going to go ahead and actually set scene scale. So the way I would do that is go in the Z plugin. I'm going to set this off over here. And we're going to be focusing on Scale Master. Now, in the beginning, I'm just going to go ahead and say set scene scale. And it's automatically going to generate... Actually, no, scratch that. Sorry. Rewind. What we're going to do is actually... we're going to create a new bounding box. Reason why is because I want the bounding box to be the size of my model as a whole. Forgive me, guys. I am tired today. So now we can see my model on the inside here. So I can accurately measure the entire model with a new bounding box. And this can be what sets my scale. From here, I'm now going to hit set scene scale on this bounding box. And this box, we can call this whatever we want. We can want this bounding box to be, let's just call it 6 inches. Okay? That's what I'm going to want it to be. I'm going to go ahead and say set scene scale. And now I'm going to go ahead and say millimeters. Millimeters is super important when you're doing 3D printing because a lot of 3D printing software, the slicers actually recognize millimeters over the imperial system. So you're going to want the metric system. So we're going to go ahead and hit that. Now for conversion purposes, if we go to pull up our handy dandy calculator, so a little bit of math here, but it's super important. I know I want the height of my model to be 6 inches tall. So I'm going to say 6 times 25.4 is going to give me 152.4 millimeters. That 25.4 millimeter is the conversion to 1 inch. So 152.4. So I'll now come to my scale master on the y-axis, because that's what's up and down, and type in 152.4. And then I'm going to go ahead and say resize subtool all. Okay? And now I'm going to go ahead and do it. There we go. 152.39999999999. Did it? Or do I want? No, let's not turn on all. Let's do that. Let's do it one more time. Delete this real quick. Let's try this one more time. New bounding box. There we go. Beautiful. Setting scale. Do it. Also, remember the center of subtools to the world. I usually skip that math and let the company figure that out. Yeah, right? Okay. For reasons unknown to me at this moment in time, this is actually giving me a little bit of an error. So we're going to do this manually here. I'm going to go ahead and scale this down to what I want it to be within the bounding box. Whee! Perfect. That is fine. Let's go ahead and delete this one. So my box is the right math, but it didn't want to merge it down. But we got our math, which is fine. So now our box is set. Let's go ahead and move on to the next step. We don't need that anymore, so let's close that down. And I've actually covered this before, set scene scale too. So real quick, we're going to do this as ZBrush sets scale. Boop, 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 boop. Hello, everyone. So if you want to follow along a little bit more closely, here's a video in which I cover that whole process on Ask ZBrush. Now what we're going to do is we're going to focus on the cut. So from here, what I'm going to do, that's my final one. So I duplicate that wrist like I did before, but what I like to do now is go to deformation, and I like to inflate it by just a little bit. So the way I have basically figured my math out before is I will actually do something more like, I'll click on inflate and go points. I think it's like 0.25 typically for me. Maybe it's like 0.5. I usually start about 0.25 to 0.5 and just see what that's going to look like. We don't want the cut to be too crazy. And then we're going to set that to a negative cut by coming up to the folder and setting that cut, and then let's say live boolean. And now we can start to see that our cut here, the way it is. Now, when you see gray like this is an indication that that's not being fully cut with the model itself. So if you ever get this, what you can do is we can come through here and we can actually pull this section up until it's all being recognized as the cut itself. Sorry, not gray, white. There you go. Boop. Just like such. You can see now it's all being cut into it. Yeah. There we go. Now if we make this cut, we say go ahead and boolean our folder. Hello, what's happening? I'm good. We're about ready to wrap it up. All right, Troubleshooting Central, here we go. All right, we're gonna need to troubleshoot this for a second. So my mesh might have an error in it. That is okay. I'm gonna go ahead and delete that. Come through. Let's actually see if we should fix this. Let's check our mesh integrity. So geometry, mesh integrity. Check mesh. Yeah, there's 39 faces with multiple. So let's go ahead and fix that. So if you ever get an error like that where it's popping out, that's typically the first place to check. Let's go ahead and check your mesh integrity under geometry, mesh integrity fix. And let's do the same thing actually with the wrist, because we might have errors there on our model. Yep, board faces, edges, fix that mesh. That makes sense. Okay, great. Let's go ahead and try that again. So let's turn this back on. Solo mode. There we go. That's a little bit better. Come through and let's just go ahead and boolean that folder. The red line in the undo history is actually telling me that there is a history. There's actually a history note elsewhere on another tool. So when you see the red line, that's actually what it's indicating. Okay. Okay. Let's actually, my model's actually giving me some trouble at the moment. Let's inspect our model. I might have some holes I need to fix before it goes the rest of the way. So let's take this bounding box. Let's actually put this above our tool. And let's actually set this to cut. Let's move this up in here. Let's actually come through. It's on. Oh, yeah. Okay, that explains it. So here's a good way to check your model in case. So I'm going to have to go through and actually make this watertight a little bit more. So if the mesh integrity doesn't work and your Boolean's still giving you a little bit of some funky errors, a lot of times you could check your model by taking a box, setting it to cut, and putting it above your tool or your tools. And then from here, what we can do is then just pretend like it's being 3D printed. Just come in and start inspecting. And so I have some random holes, and this might be causing some conflict, so I'll want to come through and fix it. So this might be causing some issues there, although it looks like, you know, that shouldn't be too hard to weld up. Look at this. So we're going to need to do that. So this is why 3D printing prep can take a while, is that you want to make sure all this stuff is prepped and is as clean as possible, and you're not getting too many errors. This is just because the box is not big enough. So I'm going to continue to do that, but that's how I start prepping my print. It's going to take a little bit of time. I'll show you guys when I'm done with it. But yeah, that's pretty much going to wrap it up for today. Let's see. Doop. Okay, great. Perfect. Well, those bandages, could they be 3D printed? Yes. With the texture, yes, they can be. Yeah, it'll just have to make sure that I have really good micro settings. I want to do better than 50 microns, and that should do okay. That should do well. All right, that's going to wrap it up for today. I still have a lot to do to fix this model. So here's what I'll do. I will finish prepping this model, but then the next time I stream, I will showcase the whole print process. I'll go through everything again once we're done with it. But this is going to take another few hours just to get it the way I want it to be and error-free. So I'm going to go ahead and save this out. What is that hand that you're sculpting? So this hand is actually the Santa Cruz hand. It was a sticker that I found on the back of a car. I didn't even know it was them. Here, actually, I'll show you the reference real quick. Here, if I go ahead and just load this up, I'll show you. Boop, boop, boop. I go to load. Do I have it here? Ah, where's the reference? Oh, where did I put the reference? Might have moved it. Let's see here. Let's go Santa Cruz. Yeah, wow. Oh, here it is. Yeah. So here's an example of what I saw, and I really liked it. This was really cool. So I was like, I have to sculpt this. I saw a variation of this, and I was like, I just fell in love with it, which is really cool. Have I ever encountered a spider webbing effect in FDM print process? And if yes, have you found any solutions for that? Yes, I have. The spider web effect print, for me, a lot of times came down to the retraction of the filaments moving from one layer to another, or moving from one section of the print for another. So your retraction speed and distance just might need to be fine-tuned a little bit. So I would say take a look at the speed of the stepper motor and maybe adjust the retraction. Start with the retraction itself, pulling in a little bit more, and then see if that fixes it. And if that doesn't fix it, then it could be the speed of the retraction. So fix the distance first, then maybe fix the speed. And if that still doesn't fix it, then from there it could just be like, well, I don't know at that point. Like, yeah, I would say speed and retraction, that's a place to start. From there, you maybe have your nozzle lift up and hop from one spot to another. There's like a lot of little things that could minimize that as much as possible. It could also be that your filament is too hot. If your filament's too hot, it's going to ooze out and not be placed in a way that... maybe it's too hot and it's too drippy, you know what I mean? So when it moves, it's like still stringing along. So that could also be it. So for example, let's say you're printing PLA and you're printing at like 205 Celsius. That's actually a pretty good range temp, but what if you're printing at 215 because it gave you better results, but in turn is causing another issue? So those are little things to take a look at. So retraction speed, retraction distance, hopping of the nozzle, and possibly even heat temp. I would start there. And it used to be on the skateboards back in the 80s. Yes, it did, Lucas. Yes, it did. And that's actually, I knew that, but I didn't know that. It was super funny. All right, everybody, that's going to cover it for today. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with me as I come through this. I know this stream was this one was probably a little bit more boring just because we were doing a lot of prepping and print and stuff like that. But we're going to continue to do that. Everything you saw me do today is how I'm going to finish prepping this model. It's a lot of back and forth and making sure that all the processes are correctly, and that your model is as clean and as watertight as possible. So when your booleans don't correctly cut, again, it's time to check the model, make sure that things aren't watertight. So I know what I need to do is just going to take time to get that done. So I'm going to work on that when I can, and then I'll showcase everything else. But here is the final model itself. It's looking really, really, really cool, and I like it a lot. So hopefully you guys do too. And then I'm going to think of another project to start on. We have the ZBrush Summit coming up. And then, like I said, next Wednesday, I'm not going to be streaming because I'm at Adobe Max giving presentations and showcasing how wonderful ZBrush is to the entire community. So I'll be there. If you happen to be there, please stop by. That'd be awesome. And if you happen to be this weekend as Lightbox, where I'll also be there doing a presentation on Friday. So if you happen to be there, please stop by, say hi. We'd love to see you guys. With that being said, everybody have a fantastic rest of your week, and I'll see you guys later. Bye, 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 bye.